This is hands down one of the creepiest experiences of my life and probably the most in danger I ever was, even though I didn't realize it at the time. I'm a 19-year-old female. I live outside of a medium-sized Virginian city. Even though we're only about 40 minutes away from a decently sized city, our area is still very rural and unpopulated. I had been in community college during the time, working toward a nursing degree. Like most young women who hadn't found a good boyfriend or husband yet, I turned to internet dating apps. I was a bit hesitant about doing so, but I really wasn't in the partying scene and there weren't any guys that I already knew who I was interested in, so Tinder just seemed like the logical option. At first, I didn't have very much luck. It was pretty bad. The first month I was on there, I got nothing but invitations to one-night stands and creepy guys asking to do all kinds of horrible things. There were a few guys that tried to act smooth, but it was very obvious that they were only interested in getting me in their bed. The only positive thing to come out of it all, up at that point, was that I had made $50 selling pictures of my feet. Joke all you want, but $50 is $50. At a certain point, I realized that I either needed to lower my expectations or find another place to find dates. I decided to give one of the less perverted guys on there a try. He didn't wow me very much, but he seemed like he was a nice guy. He told me that he had a job, came from a nice family, and finished college. We met at a coffee shop in my town and hit it off from the beginning. We were very compatible from the start. He was compassionate, driven, and very smart. Those were all qualities I was looking for in a guy, and he looked a lot better in person than he did on his profile picture, as surprising as that is to say. We eventually drove around in his car for a few hours just so we could talk. What did we talk about, you might be wondering? Conspiracy theories. It was like the moment we left the public, he turned into a conspiracy theorist nutjob. When he first started talking about the government listening to our conversations, I joked with him and said something like, "Okay, Alex Jones." He didn't take kindly to this lighthearted joke, and there was a little bit of tension for a few minutes. Eventually, though, he went right back to blabbering about the government and aliens. I'm not going to lie to you. I was halfway interested in some of the things that he was saying because they seemed at least a little true. But some of his conclusions just didn't line up. Didn't make logical sense. It was like he could get you from point A to point B, but when he went straight from point B to point X for no reason. We eventually got off topic and things went back to normal for a short while. We started talking about our past relationships and some more intimate details like that. We really bonded there, and I felt a weird connection with him. As strange as he may have been, I felt like I could be there for him. We had gone on about 2 or 3 dates before I started asking around about him. I wasn't big into the whole gossip scene, but I always want to know everything I can about someone that I'm dating. Most people I asked around town that I knew said that they had never heard or met him before. This was a little strange considering he lived in this town and seemed like he would have met at least a few of these people. The only people that I had found who had heard of him had some really strange stories to tell. One of them went like this. I guess he had rented an apartment that was on top of a beauty salon in town. At least according to this person, he got really violent one day and started stomping around upstairs and yelling. It wasn't like he was angry, but it seemed more like he was trying to talk himself into doing something. And what was he saying? He was chanting, "Kill them, kill them." The whole thing seemed a little ridiculous. I wasn't sure I believed it, and I just convinced myself that this couldn't have been the same guy. Sure, he was a little weird, especially with the conspiracy theory thing, but he seemed like an otherwise normal human being. I kept this in mind during the next 2 or 3 dates we went on. I tried picturing him being the kind of person that would do something like that, flying off the handle for some kind of reason, and I just didn't see it. Couldn't imagine it at the time. And oh, how wrong I was. One Friday night after I finished all my homework for the weekend, he texted me. He told me that he wanted me to come over. I honestly wasn't in the mood. I was really tired from class and just wanted to be alone for the night. I put my phone down and walked into the bathroom so I could shower. When I got out, I had 53 missed calls. I got worried that my mom died or something. I looked at all the notifications and they all came from this guy. I checked my text messages and he had repeatedly sent me the same sentence over and over. It said, "I need your help right now," and it was in all caps. Unsure of exactly what to do, I gave him a call. He answered the phone and seemed extremely panicked and worried. I finally got to ask him what was going on, and he told me that he was worried that someone had broken into his house, but he couldn't find them. I guess he was home alone, and this had been going on for about 30 minutes by this point. I told him that if he couldn't find someone else in his house, then there probably wasn't anyone else there. It just seemed obvious to me. But he didn't buy it. He was thoroughly convinced that someone was in there. He told me that he heard a door smash open on the other side of the house, and when he rushed over there, it was wide open, and he thought that whoever had smashed it open was still there, hiding, waiting for him to relax so they could jump out and attack. I started asking myself whether or not he was in a healthy state of mind. I wasn't sure if I believed that his door had been smashed in. Maybe he really is crazy, I began thinking to myself quietly. He kept begging and pleading with me that I needed to come out there and help him. I didn't have a gun and I was just some girl. What was I going to do? I decided that I didn't want anything to do with this guy anymore. I blocked him on everything and just kind of hoped the problem would go away. I tried getting my mind onto happier things. I figured that I was just going to watch my favorite movie, The Lion King, and just eat some ice cream. Before I left to get some ice cream, my mom asked me if I could stop and get her some cigarettes. I agreed. I was happy about it because I knew that I would have to drive by his house tonight. I didn't think that he was crazy enough to do anything about it or even notice, but it still made me a little uneasy to think about being closer to him like that. There was a lot of traffic about a few minutes ahead of his house, and when I finally passed it, I saw police cars everywhere. My heart dropped. I started feeling guilty. I instantly thought that somebody really had broken into his house and tried attacking him. I pulled over on the side of the road and started making my way to his house. I asked one of the policemen who was on the scene what was going on. He told me that the guy who lived in this house had taken his mother hostage and was holding her at gunpoint. I was shocked. He wasn't being attacked. He was the attacker. I ran back to my car, slammed the door, and drove away as quickly as I could. That really freaked me out that night. And ever since, I've wondered what would have happened to me if I had gone to his house when he'd asked me to. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured, and the police got him into custody after 3 days. He's in federal prison now. It was hands down the scariest experience of my life, but as bad as it may have been, I still have a Tinder profile. Being in a relationship with a bad person can really take a toll on your soul. I dated a girl for 3 years. I did everything for her and really gave her my all. And in return, she stole, lied, and cheated. I genuinely went out of my way to avoid spending too much time with other girls. What was she doing? Well, I'm sure you can figure that out. I was angry. I had always been the nice type of guy. Not that weirdo that would randomly buy some girl flowers and expect her to date me, but the kind of guy that understood a thing or two about people and knew a little bit of kindness goes a long way. I really did pride myself on being a nice guy, but I guess my ex took it as a weakness. So without putting on a whole pity party for myself, that was what led me to downloading a few dating apps online. I wanted to just date as many girls as I could and, I don't know, get revenge in my mind, if that makes any sense. I hated feeling like I was being played. I didn't want to necessarily hurt anyone, I just wanted to raise my self-esteem. My brother, who had always been skeptical of my ex-girlfriend, was very supportive of the whole getting out of there and doing whatever I want with whoever I want. Well, I ended up getting myself in the biggest dumpster fire of my life. There were points when I really thought I was in genuine danger. It was quite a nightmare, and in retrospect, I never should have gone down this path. Someone being a bad partner to you doesn't justify what I did, and I take responsibility for my actions. 2 weeks into the whole internet dating thing, and I found it pretty easy to find a couple of girls that wanted to date me regularly. And for a 1-month-long period, I was dating 3 girls at the same time, and they all thought I was only dating them. One of them was basically as interested in doing it as I was. She was pretty easy to handle. There was another one that was a tall brunette, and she was truly something else. I kind of wish that I had met her under different circumstances because she was probably the best one of them all. And then there was the blonde one. She wasn't an actual blonde, one of those bleach blondes with country boots types of girls. Let's call her Stephanie. Stephanie had a very bad background herself. She told me about her past where she had been abused by her father and had multiple horrible boyfriends. There was something very off about her, and I figured that I would find out what that was sooner or later. And oh boy, did I find out. As crazy as Stephanie was, she was definitely a perceptive little girl. She could read into my thoughts in a way that I found very surprising. There were at least 2 separate occasions that she had asked me if I was seeing anyone else. Of course I lied. I knew that if I came clean that she was going to end it, and I wasn't done having my revenge on the world just yet. I remember taking Stephanie out for a date on Friday night. I took her to a decent steakhouse. I wasn't trying to be nice for anything. I honestly wanted to eat steak myself. When the date was over, we hung out and talked for a little while, and then we had some fun. By the time I was ready to head home, it was only 10 o'clock. When I was getting ready to leave, I had already been texting the other girl that was really easy, getting her ready for maybe a 12 a.m. time of fun. Everything seemed like it was going as planned. I got over to the other girl's house at 12:15. She was home alone. We started getting ready to go to the bedroom, and we heard a loud knocking on the door. She had no idea who it could have been. Her parents were out for the weekend, and she rarely had people come to her house like this. She answered the door. I was waiting in the bedroom when I heard her fall to the floor. I rushed out to see what happened. It was Stephanie. She must have followed me here. My heart dropped to the floor and I felt extremely panicked. I looked down to see the girl and her face was bloody. Must have been punched in the nose or something. And then I saw something in Stephanie's hand. It was a hammer. She had tears running down her cheeks, but I also saw hate in her eyes. I'm sorry. That's all I could murmur out before she threw the hammer at me. It hit me in the back, left a horrible bruise. It was honestly mortifying. I was worried that she was going to pull out another weapon of some kind, a knife or maybe a gun. There's no telling with her. The other girl was on the floor, completely unconscious. Stephanie started asking me a bunch of questions. How many other women were there? How long has this been going on? And why? I also noticed this theme with the questions she would ask me. She always related it back to her not being enough. Like the reason I was cheating on her was because of the fact that Stephanie didn't fulfill my needs or something like that. I'm not going to lie to you, I came clean completely. Beginning this whole charade felt wrong from the very beginning. If it hadn't been for my brother's encouragement, I never would have gone through with any of this. I tried explaining to her that I'd just gotten out of a really bad relationship and wanted to be a player for a little while. We talked for a little while more, and then she asked me something that really caught me off guard. Do you still love me? I told her yes. Honestly, I didn't really care for her very much, but I knew that I was running serious risk if I said no. I figured that I could just end this entire dumpster fire in a couple of days through the phone or something, kind of guarantee my own well-being there. I talked Stephanie down, and she became more calm. I told her that she should get back in her truck and go home and try to relax. For some reason, she still wanted to be in a relationship despite all of this. I told her that I still loved her and got her back into her vehicle. And when I did, I noticed that a hammer was not the only thing she had in there. I definitely saw a shotgun and would look like a gallon of gasoline, and I'm only assuming that she also had some matches. Suffice to say that I was extremely terrified of what this girl was capable of. I brought the other girl to the hospital. She didn't remember anything. I tried convincing her that it was some random stranger that hit her in the face, and somehow she was as dumb as she was easy. She was totally fine, didn't even have a concussion, just, unfortunately, a broken nose. I ended the relationship with the easy girl and the tall brunette. I knew that breaking up with Stephanie was going to be a little bit more difficult, though. I deleted all my social media and blocked her on everything. I wasn't sure what else I could even do. She only knew my name and maybe what my car looks like, and that's about it. It's been a couple of weeks since this whole thing, and thankfully, Stephanie has not reached out since, and I'm really hoping she never finds me again. I can understand the pain of being cheated on, but the way she hurt that other girl was outright wrong. But I guess some people react to things differently. I can only hope that Stephanie gets better after this whole ordeal. Maybe get some therapy because, God, she needs it. I created a Tinder after I moved out of my parents' house. Anyone out there can understand how hard it is to date people while living with your parents. It doesn't matter how old you are, how experienced you are, or how many times you've been with someone, you will always be a child in the eyes of your parents. And that's why after my first long-term relationship ended while I was in college, I decided to wait until I officially moved out to pursue anyone seriously again. Little background about me, I was 21 years old at the time and I graduated from a 4-year university a little early. I was never reckless or wild at any point in my life, although I really wanted to be. I always felt like I was holding back. So when I moved out and started living on my own after college, I decided to get experimental with my love life. That started out as going to the club twice a week, but I realized that I was only attracting perverts there. That's why I created the Tinder profile. That way, I could at least vet guys before I let them into my life. I remember looking at each profile carefully before swiping left or right. I didn't want to be too superficial because I know that some guys have redeeming qualities even if they don't look like supermodels. I remember learning a lot about men in my last relationship. One of the things I learned was that guys don't really know how to dress nice or present themselves in a nice way. A good outfit and a nice haircut can make such a difference. In my last long-term relationship, my boyfriend went from a 6 to a 9 with just those changes. I remember I was swiping around on Tinder one night while I was watching Netflix. It was exactly what you'd expected. A true crime documentary. Love those. And I remember feeling a little bugged out because I saw a face on Tinder that I recognized. I had never seen the guy's face anywhere other than Tinder, but I felt like I had seen him multiple times now. It was a little weird because I remember swiping left the last time I saw it. It was like I was seeing him a second time or something. That time, I went out of my way to read his name. Tyler. He had a very narrow face and looked like the kind of guy that likes to go to biker clubs on the weekends. He looked really rough. He had this long black hair that looked extremely unkempt, and he had a really mean face on his profile picture. Those were enough indicators that I knew I was not interested in this guy. I swiped left and checked out a few more profiles before losing interest and going back to watching this Ted Bundy documentary. A couple of days had passed. I hadn't been on Tinder for a while. No particular reason, I just didn't have any time for it. I landed a really nice job after college in the local laboratory, and I was working pretty hard. Between having that new job and moving out, it was a little difficult finding time for the whole dating thing. So this is where things got a little leery at first. I logged back onto Tinder and started checking out more guys. I was extremely surprised to see that Tyler was back. I didn't match with him or anything. He didn't super like me or anything. He was just there, recommended to me again. I remembered looking around online to see if Tinder would just show you the same few guys a couple of times, and I didn't find any convincing answers. I remember reading a few comments on Reddit that said it's possible to see the same person more than once, but only if you swiped a lot and ran out of people to see. And as much as I used Tinder, I didn't use it enough to run out of people to match with. I lived just outside of a mid-sized city, and my local community was large enough. I thought it would have been extremely weird to have run out of people enough to see this guy multiple times like this. And here's the other weird thing. I'm a girl. This is supposed to be a guy problem because there aren't enough women out there. There also weren't any other guys who repeated. Of all the guys on Tinder, the weird biking guy with greasy hair and probably carries a knife on him, he was the guy I kept having to see. There were probably 3 or 4 more occasions when I'd seen his profile. I remember getting frustrated. I purposely matched with him and then blocked him before he even had a chance to message me. I figured that would get rid of the problem, right? Guess again. Because the very next day I was on there, I saw him again. Exact same profile picture and everything. That was the point when I started getting really freaked out. I took a break from Tinder for a few days. I tried telling myself there just weren't too many men in the area, I guessed. I couldn't think of a more logical reason. Next creepy incident happened when I saw that exact same profile picture and name try to add me on Facebook. I don't use Facebook all that often, and it was the first time I probably used it in a week that I logged in and saw this. I got a little braver than I normally am and decided to accept the friend request just to see what he would do. And you guessed it. He messaged me saying that he had seen me on Tinder. We hadn't exchanged 5 messages before he was asking me what restaurant I wanted to eat at. I explained to him that I wasn't interested and didn't want to date anymore. He said that I was lying and started threatening me. He started describing horrible things he was going to do to me. They were mostly lewd in nature, but some just seemed a little violent. Now I know that I probably shouldn't have accepted his friend request to begin with. I probably should never have messaged him either, and I should have blocked him right then and there, but I didn't. In a weird way, I was so curious and interested in this. I agreed to meet him in a parking lot of a strip mall in town. I don't know what possessed me to do it, but I agreed to it. I wasn't consciously planning on pursuing him in a serious capacity, but then again, here I was now, driving to some strip mall for a really freaky guy. I remember being excited and nervous like I hadn't been in a while as I drove over there. It was such a thrill, and I'm not sure why it was either. I pulled in at one end of the parking lot and sat there for a few minutes. I pulled up my phone and opened Facebook Messenger. He had already messaged me a minute ago asking where I was. I told him that I was almost there. I lied. I really wanted to see him before he saw me, and thankfully I did. I spotted him about 6 car lengths away. He hadn't seen me and my windows were pretty dark, so I doubt that he would be able to see inside. I sat there in complete silence studying him. He looked even rougher in real life than he did online. His hair was even longer and more disheveled, and there was one beat-up old car. Rusted, filthy inside and out. Death Trap was spray-painted on the driver's side door. One look at him and one look at that car and you knew it was his. My better judgment finally kicked in and I drove away. I blocked him on Facebook and closed my Tinder profile. Again, I'm not sure what I was really expecting to happen. Maybe some part of me wanted to date a wildly unhinged bad boy. It wasn't long after this point in my life that I had met my now fiancé. We have a really happy and loving relationship, and that probably wouldn't have happened if I had gone along with that degenerate. Whatever would have happened, I'm really glad I don't have to find out. This is a pretty weird story. I'm a 24-year-old man. I was friends with a 29-year-old woman who had 2 kids. Her mom and my mom were best friends at the office where they worked a couple of years back, and our families became pretty close. Me and this girl, let's call her Angela, became quite close. We were never romantically interested in each other, and we just had a very compatible sense of humor. She was a single mom, and she honestly struggled a lot. Her former husband seemed like a really good guy, but the pressure of raising a kid broke him. He tried convincing Angela to get an abortion a week before the baby was born. That was pretty messed up. And then he started gambling obsessively. Angela told me that he gambled away their combined savings account, which was about $8,000. Their marriage lasted for about a year or 2 before he finally just disappeared. And as bad as it might be to say, she was better off without him. Raising 2 kids might not be easy, but raising 3 is a lot more difficult. Angela and I had become good friends after I started helping her take care of her kids. I honestly felt bad for her, and as much as her family tried to help, they didn't have enough time outside of work to make a big difference. I didn't do a lot, and she was always appreciative of what I did do. She was really lonely and have been looking for a guy for a while. She had the great idea to go on Tinder. I remember her telling me about this one really handsome guy. I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. From the first time I met him, I hated him. I had a really bad feeling about his motives. The situation was just weird. Now don't get me wrong, Angela is a great person and any guy would be lucky to have her, but she was a single mom. It didn't matter how nice or attractive she was. She had 2 kids, didn't make very much money, and if it wasn't for her family and friends, probably wouldn't be able to keep her life together. I always expected her to either go for an ugly, wealthier guy that could take care of her, or a guy with kids of his own. You know, something like that. But this guy that she was dating now, he was a freak. He was attractive, had a good job, and seemingly had everything going for him. And here was the kicker. He claimed to have never dated a girl before, and he was 28. And just think about how weird that is for a moment. Every time I saw them together, it was so obvious to me that he was faking his personality in order to impress Angela. And the sad part is, she totally bought all of it. She ate it up with a shovel. Call me a jerk, but when something seems too good to be true, it normally is. I knew there was going to be some kind of dark demon behind this little act. He was going to turn out to be a drug addict or something worse. I was honest with Angela about the whole situation from the very beginning, and she really didn't appreciate that. She started telling me to mind my own business and that I should just be happy for her. After the 3rd or 4th time that I said something to her, she told me that I should stop being jealous, and that I was in love with her. Angela was definitely not my type, and I was not attracted to her. It made me mad that she insinuated that I was, but after that, I stopped helping her and created a lot of distance. About 2 weeks had gone by before I started feeling worried about her again. I decided to look into the guy that she had been dating. I knew that he was some kind of freak, and if I could somehow prove it, then at least I could save her some trouble. This is going to sound ridiculous, but it really was this simple. I Googled his name. I looked around on the first few pages in the results and found his Facebook account. It was a public profile, and I could view everything that he commented on and posted. But here was the weird part. The profile said he was in a relationship with another girl, and it was another single mom. I also noticed that he was quite active in a few LGBT communities online. But here was the weird thing. He had a couple of posts about the stigma against MAPs, or minor attracted persons. It had been within a year that he posted a 5-paragraph rant about how children can be in love with adults and that age was just a number. I found it really disturbing and immediately knew that he had some bad intentions with Angela's kids. I got together with Angela and made sure that her mother was with us when I told her. Her mom was very street savvy and I knew that she would side with me on this issue. I didn't want Angela to think that I was making stuff up. I took as many screenshots as I could and I showed it to both of them. First of all, Angela didn't even know that he had a Facebook. He had told her that he didn't believe in social media, and even worse, he had watched her kids alone before. Angela's mom freaked out and started lecturing her about creepy men. I could tell that it was really tough for Angela to accept the truth. I know it's hard. She really wanted to believe that a nice, smart, wealthy, and attractive guy wanted to be with her. But this guy clearly wanted to be with her kids more than the other way around. Angela apologized to me for being an idiot about this situation, and she thanked me for going through the trouble to find out. Angela told me that they reported him to the police and she broke up with him. She asked her kids multiple questions about potentially being abused, and it seemed like nothing had happened, thankfully. I don't know how close it came to being a bad situation, and I'm just really happy that I was smart enough to Google the guy's name. If I hadn't done that, her kids could have potentially been kidnapped or worse. All of the information that I used to convince Angela and her mother that this guy was dangerous came from one little search. A search that Angela apparently didn't do herself. It also made me realize how gullible people are when they really want to believe something. If you want to lie to someone, don't tell them something that's difficult. Tell them something they really deep down want to believe, and you'll have a much easier time of convincing them. Angela told me that she was going to take a break from guys for a while. I went back to being a good friend and helping out, and everything has been fine since. This happened a few years back. The worst thing I've ever gone through. Since this is going to be completely anonymous, I'm going to be able to tell you the entire truth of what happened. Writing this out has been a big revelation for me. I didn't realize how bad the situation was and how stupid I had been. It also made me realize I have incredibly low self-esteem and a horrible self-image. I've been working on these things since this experience, and I've been going through therapy regularly. After something like this, I really needed it. I was in my early 30s. I was single and didn't have any luck in finding a good girlfriend. Never had a relationship last longer than a year. I didn't know what I had been doing wrong for all the time, and a part of me started to believe that I was incapable of keeping a girl around. This was a couple of years back now, and I found myself looking for a potential partner on Craigslist. You guys have it easy these days with all the apps and stuff around. Dating on Craigslist was honestly tough. The dating scene on Craigslist in my area was populated enough that I had never lost hope in finding someone. I didn't have the confidence to approach a stranger and didn't even know where I would do that if I did have the confidence. Someone had posted on Craigslist that they were interested in finding a guy for a potential group activity, if you get my drift. They claimed it was a girlfriend and a boyfriend who were interested in experimenting. I figured that I didn't have anything to lose, and if they turned out to be weird or something, I could just leave. I messaged them and we got in touch. We agreed to meet and see what happened on one Friday night. It has been about 6 months since my last relationship, and I was excited to be getting some action. I met them at a bar in the downtown area of my city. The girl, let's call her Natalie, was very pretty, but her boyfriend wasn't the most attractive in the world. He was really overweight and pretty ugly, if I'm going to be completely honest. I didn't really care how he looked, though. I was more interested in her. We went back to their place, and things took a surprising turn. She told her boyfriend to go wait in the other room while we had our fun. I thought that this was going to be one of those group kind of things, and I didn't expect this, but hey, I wasn't complaining. After we finished, she started telling me that she was feeling really unsatisfied with her boyfriend. She told me that she'd been looking for another guy to come into the relationship who could better satisfy her needs. She told me that her boyfriend was honestly too obese to participate. I almost didn't believe her at first. But she said it with a dead serious face and had clearly put some thought into what she was going to say to me. She told me that she would love to date the two of us and be in a polyamorous relationship. I told her that I would give it some thought. I basically got the vibe that I was going to be used, and that was about it. I figured that I couldn't complain. That's a dream for most guys. We had a couple of more experiences before we all agreed on what this was going to be. 2 months into the relationship, I moved in with them. I didn't interact with him all that much. We had a few conversations, but it was honestly pretty awkward. After all, I was only here because he was too big to really please his girlfriend. I'm sure that was in a healthy frame of mind to be in. As time went on, our relationship expanded. We had brought 2 more people into our relationship, a girl and a transgender. Everyone was always pretty nice and nothing ever happened without approval. I understand this probably sounds extremely strange, but it worked. At least it seemed to work. The entire relationship revolved around Natalie. We eventually started renting a house that could provide us all of our own rooms except for Natalie. She didn't have a room of her own. She would just sleep in a different room almost every night. I always looked forward to the nights when she slept in my bed. I also noticed that there was a dynamic where being nice to Natalie meant that she was more likely to sleep in your bed that night. So it turned into a big competition of who could buy her the most stuff or do things for her that would make her happy. I didn't see it at the time, but that's exactly the way the entire relationship dynamic was set up, and I completely fell into the trap. I remember buying these expensive steak dinners and cooking them for her in hopes that she would sleep in my bed that night. I remember when there was this one occasion when I had bought Natalie a new necklace, brought her home a special dinner, and did all of her laundry that day. I really wanted her to myself that night, but her original boyfriend had gone out of his way to pay all of her bills for the month, which normally didn't happen. Me and him started arguing, and things got a little confrontational. Thankfully, it didn't get violent. Natalie may have been a manipulative devil, but she was good at diffusing these tense situations. I remember a couple of times when we would sit down and have these group chats where we discussed what was on our minds. I brought this topic up and said that it wasn't fair how Natalie got everyone to do her favors. It felt like it created a competition and we had to compete for her love and acceptance. Now, it had probably been about 14 months of living with them and being in this polyamorous relationship. The night I said that, I could tell that she was extremely offended that I had even thought this. She stopped sleeping in my bed after that. The dynamic had completely changed. It didn't matter how much effort I put into getting her to sleep with me after that, she never did. And as desperate as it might sound, I really needed her love and acceptance. I started feeling really bad about myself and I couldn't stand it. It was about a month later when she sat me down and told me that it would be best if I packed my things and moved out. She said the chemistry just wasn't there anymore. My heart was broken. I couldn't believe it. As strange as it may have seemed, I have really grown accustomed to this lifestyle and I couldn't imagine not living this way anymore. I was about to go from living with other people to living alone. And that night I honestly thought about ending my own life. I went for a drive right after she told me that and almost drove off the bridge. I started going, but something in me snapped and I decided not to. When I got back home, I packed my things, went to a motel room for a few days, and found an apartment to live in alone. That was a really dark time in my life. I reached back out to my parents and ended up moving back to my hometown. The whole ordeal was miserable and had nearly driven me to ending my own life. I found a decent job and started going to therapy, and that was when I had really started to connect the dots. This relationship was never about new experiences or loving as many people as possible. It really was about Natalie making us compete for her attention. She had this savior complex and treated all of us like we were less than her, less than nothing sometimes. It was extremely psychologically manipulative, and I can't believe how easily I fell for it. It was only after a few therapy sessions that it all became so clear. I've been single since then, and I spent most of my time with my family now. My sister has kids of her own, and I've gotten really close with them. They are really nice kids, and a part of me really wishes I had kids of my own. I'm not really sure if I'm going to start looking to date again, maybe ever. It's been a few years since I moved back home, and I'm honestly really scared of ever trying to be in a normal relationship again. Whatever happens the rest of my life, though, I'm happy I at least still have a family that loves and accepts me, where I don't have to compete for attention like some kind of puppy in an animal shelter. Jessica has been my best friend for a very long time, and when she started dating this psychopath, I knew that she was in danger. But she wouldn't listen. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself. I am a 22-year-old male, and this story is about my friend Jessica. Before you make your accusations, yes, I did have feelings for her. We had dated once, and it completely changed the dynamic of our relationship. We had been best friends before, and then we dated, and she told me that she didn't want to lose me as a friend. Our friendship never really was the same after that. I made it clear that I had feelings for her, but I guess she just didn't feel the same way. I still don't know why she wouldn't date me, because she lost me both as a friend and as a boyfriend. This had been about a year after we tried dating each other. It was only 2 days, and it was pretty strange. Dating someone that you've been best friends with for a very long time is tough because you have to start acting a certain way. It's not like meeting someone on Tinder. You have this relationship and all of a sudden there's a romantic element to it, and it can be tough. And I guess I didn't try hard enough. Anyway, we still agreed to remain friends after that experience, but again, it didn't really go back to normal. Life continued and we slowly but surely drifted apart. I'm not sure if she had dated other guys at that time, but she didn't tell me about them if she did. She didn't tell me about any other men she was romantically involved in until she started dating a guy named Aiden. This guy was a complete jerk. He wore this dirty camouflage hoodie all the time and always smelled like beer. I only met him a few times and I really disliked him. It was one thing to be dating Jessica, but he was borderline abusive. Like, he started telling her how to fix her hair and how to dress. He starts controlling every aspect of her life. It wasn't very long into the relationship that she told me that he didn't really care for our friendship. She told me that she still wanted to be friends with me, but I knew that this was going to be an issue sooner or later. She completely changed her haircut. Now, it was short and blonde, and she also started getting tattoos. I always found that strange because she never expressed a desire to get a tattoo before, but I had a feeling that he was making her. She gradually started cutting out all of her friends and spent all of her time with Aiden. I asked a couple of our mutual friends about it, and they all agreed with me that Aiden seemed like a bad guy and that he was controlling her. Things have finally gotten to the point when I had enough. I made the decision that I was going to tell her that she needed to break up with this guy for her own well-being. It was very obviously affecting her life. She started doing things that she had never done before. She started showing up late to work, even started smoking. Like, literally, who does that? I called her on her phone one day when she was driving to work. She had a shift at 1 p.m. and hadn't woken up until 12-something, and she was late. I tried explaining the entire situation to her and how she had become this completely different person. I told her that I was worried for her own well-being and that this guy was clearly toxic. She told me to screw off and hung up. As you can guess, she eventually blocked me on social media and completely ghosted me. I'm not going to lie to you. It really hurt my feelings that she did that. It was one thing to hang up on me and not reach out, but to go out of her way to block me on everything just seemed a bit extreme. I was half suspicious that Aiden forced her to do it, but that wasn't my problem anymore. About 2 weeks had gone by when I honestly started thinking about her again. I realized I did genuinely miss her and kind of wanted her back in my life. She had made it clear when she blocked me on social media that she wanted nothing to do with me, but it didn't stop me from sending an apologetic text message to her. I never got a reply, and I don't think she even read it. I was pretty sure that she had blocked my phone number too. At any rate, I found myself getting really curious about her. I knew that I should have stopped thinking about her at this point, but I just couldn't help myself. I created another Facebook account to be able to check in on her. I knew that she had the privacy set to open and she had my regular Facebook profile blocked, so the second one was the only way I could keep up with her. In a few weeks that we had been out of contact, she got 3 more tattoos, started posting memes about smoking weed, and even got engaged to Aiden. They hadn't been dating for 3 months and they were already engaged now. I didn't even know what to think. I didn't cry or anything, I just kind of sat there for a minute and looked at her profile picture. It was a picture of her and Aiden sitting at the lake drinking beer. The more I looked at it, the more I had a feeling that she was completely a different person now. The look in her eyes had been a look that I had never seen before. I asked a couple of our mutual friends about her and she didn't really keep in touch with anyone. There wasn't a big falling out with everyone like there was for me, but she just didn't reply to text messages or anything anymore. She was just too busy with Aiden. I haven't thought about her too much since then. I haven't reached out or anything like that. I'm not that desperate. She just isn't part of my life anymore. I find it so strange how you can just meet some random stranger on a dating app, have them come into your life, completely change who you are, and then you eventually cut off contact with everyone. I never understood what about Aiden that made her go so crazy. She made so many radical changes in her life so fast. I don't ask about her anymore. It took all of this to make me realize that I had stronger feelings for her than I had previously thought, but that opportunity is gone now. Even if she broke up with Aiden, she's a completely different person now, and I'm not sure I could ever look at her the same again. I just hope that she isn't being abused or something. Aiden definitely gives me those vibes, which is part of the reason that I disliked him from the very beginning, but again, it's not my problem anymore. All I can do is try to move on with my own life. So yeah, that's the story of how I lost the girl next door to a drunken Tinder user. I'd like to preface this story by telling you that I was always a very good kid growing up. My name is Mike. I was always nice to people and always followed all the rules. I never drank alcohol, smoked cigarettes, did any other drugs, never partied, never even had a girlfriend or did anything inappropriate with girls. So when I tell you the story, I want you to remember that this was during a phase in my life when I was really questioning reality and going through a serious identity crisis. With all that being said, let's get into it. So, I considered myself bi. I like girls, and I also find boys attractive. I don't seem gay or feminine or anything else, and if I didn't tell you, you probably would never guess. And it's not all guys. There are just a few that I find myself attracted to. And after reading about it online a couple of years back, I realized that it wasn't a big deal, that sometimes you're just attracted to the same sex a little bit. I never had the opportunity to be with a guy. I only ever thought about it. I was fairly shy and had a hard time making friends and relationships, so I did what any sane person does. I created a few internet dating profiles. At first, I was only looking for women. I was definitely interested in dating a guy, but I didn't really want to that bad. I knew that there was going to be a certain stigma attached to our relationship. It wasn't like we lived in San Francisco or anything and kind of had that social freedom, so I knew I was going to be doing myself a favor by simply dating a girl. After a few weeks of trying to find a decent woman, I found myself a little frustrated. The women that I met were horrible. I started simply matching with any woman I could, and all I got were uggos, single moms, and thoughts. I remember getting an attitude about it. The women online just seemed like lower quality people, as rude as that sounds, and any of the decent-seeming ones never messaged me back. And I feel the need to point out that I'm not ugly or anything. I'm fairly attractive. I'm not Brad Pitt, but I thought I was handsome enough to at least get someone of equivalent looks. I guess I was wrong. I remember getting really excited at one point when a girl agreed to go out on a date with me. She seemed like a real catch and was incredibly attractive. No kids, great. But then when the night of the date came, she told me that she was having car trouble and her mechanic needed $500. She wanted me to loan it to her and she promised to pay it back. I blocked her and gave up on women for a little while. That's when I decided to make a Grindr profile. I mean, I didn't have anything to lose, and I'm sure there were plenty of decent guys in the area that could at least keep me company until I can find someone that would be a subtle long-term partner. The night I installed Grindr, I had a guy wanting to meet up. He was definitely my type. Tall, muscular, and not afraid to take his shirt off. We skipped the whole dinner thing and got right into the action. It was a really fun night, and I enjoyed myself way more than I ever thought I would. That was when I became semi-addicted to one-night stands with guys. Months went by, and I was out doing this every single weekend, sometimes even during the week. And I remember meeting one guy in particular that changed it all. His name was Fred, and for someone who might be the most malicious person I've ever met, he had a very innocent and unfitting name. He was one of the few guys that wanted to do weird stuff before getting into it. He wanted a lot of role play, which was quite unusual and unexpected. He was extremely manipulative, and I don't know why I went along with any of it. For some reason, I just couldn't say no to him. He was sadistic, domineering. It made me feel horrible about myself. I ended up giving him my number, and we started having regular encounters. He told me that he didn't want me seeing anyone else, that I was only to see him. I couldn't explain it to you if I could. I've thought a lot about this in retrospect. The only thing that I can imagine is that he had been slipping drugs into my system somehow, which may very well have been the case. Whatever reason for it, he always got his way with me. And then, things started escalating. The foreplay became even more extreme. It started resembling the freaky stuff you see on the internet, like the really freaky stuff that you wouldn't even dream of doing in your wildest fantasy. I remember being choked one time and passing out. I had something in my mouth to prevent me from saying anything or stopping him in any way. I couldn't resist. After that, I tried telling him that I wasn't into this kind of stuff, but he refused to listen. He told me that he didn't care what I wanted. As horrible as that may have seemed, I still didn't really do anything about it. I just let it happen. Things climaxed when he tried forcing me to kill a dog. He had already psychologically manipulated me in so many ways that I almost did it. It was like he had read a psychology book on how to program someone into obedience. Because I'm not going to lie, I came really close to doing it. I remember punching him in the face and literally running away. I blocked his number and did everything I could to avoid him after that. He's tried to contact me a few times, showed up at my workplace a couple of times, but I've decided to stick to a firm no. I told him that I wasn't bi anymore and I didn't like men, especially him. Looking back, the whole experience makes me really sad. It was really traumatic, and I didn't even realize it until after it happened. But he was using the role play as a way to psychologically condition me, and there's a part of me that's really scared that he's going to do it to someone else. I tried calling the police and reporting him before, but I never had any evidence. I got a restraining order on him last month, and I'm hoping that's the last I ever hear from him. I know all of that went from 0 to 100 quick, but it's been a while. But I think after this, I'm gonna stick with only dating girls, if I even date at all. Hey friends, thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations. If you got a story, be sure to submit them to my subreddit, r/Let's Read Official, and give and receive feedback from the community, and maybe even hear your story featured on the next video. And join my Discord to interact with me and other listeners directly. And if you want to support me even more, grab early access to all future narrations for just $1 a month on Patreon, and maybe even pick up some Let's Read merch on Spreadshirt. And check out the Let's Read podcast, where you can hear all these stories in long compilation form and save huge on data, located anywhere you listen to podcasts. Links in the bio. Thanks so much, friends, and remember to wash your hands.